Bioshock Infinite's floating city of bigotry, Colombia, attempts to show a realistic depiction of racism in the 1900s. But just how effective is this theme used in the game? We're about to find out.
I guess even in a restricted area, these crackers need someone to clean the floors.
Infinite opens up with a grotesque display of an interracial couple about to be stoned in front of a raffle of white people, and continues with its less than subtle approach of displaying the beliefs of the people of Colombia. Whether it be the giant protecting our race signs or Comstock comparing black people to dogs and calling dogs more loyal, it's very clear how the people of Colombia feel towards African Americans. But if they feel so strongly against them, why even let black people into Colombia? I mean, Colombia was made to be a symbol of everything America stood for, and that certainly didn't mean black people at that time. The only way up to Colombia is via these rocket pods in these lighthouses that Booker takes in the beginning of the game. Surely it wouldn't be that hard to create something that denied access to anybody with darker skin to these rocket pods. I mean, Andrew Ryan made it so that only people in his bloodline could use the bathyspheres, so it's not that far of a stretch. White people of that time, even the tolerant ones in the north, didn't want to live next to black people, or even have them in their neighborhood. Actually, black people moving into white neighborhoods lowered the value of the homes in that neighborhood. So surely, if you were going to create a city that stood for everything America values, you just wouldn't include black people. But let's say that for whatever reason black people were allowed into Colombia. Why would they even go? The game never tells us where Comstock/Booker is from or where Colombia was initially constructed, but we can extrapolate that he was probably from the South due to his strong ideals. So what would compel black people to follow a probably Southerner into the freaking sky, where no laws apply and nobody can help protect you? I mean, you're floating above the law, essentially. Sure, there may be that fleeting hope that things could be better in Colombia, but there is also the more likely scenario that things could be much, much worse. And they are. I mean, in the sky, there's nowhere to run, and there's no greater authority than what Comstock says. Whatever little protection the federal government provided us, at least it was something. In Colombia, all bets are off, especially once they seceded from the Union. Yeah, things were hell on the ground, but it was a hell that black people got used to, and a hell that they knew how to work around. Going into the sky? That's a brand new type of hell. Sometimes the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. It simply wouldn't be worth the risk to go up there without the guarantee that things would at least not get worse. And speaking of being worse, don't you think that things would be a lot more violent than they're shown in the game? I mean, besides the public stoning that never actually happens in game, every other black person is shown in a fairly peaceful manner. Sure, they're shown doing fairly menial tasks and living in the rundown shantytown, but we're talking about people that revere John Wilkes Booth for assassinating President Lincoln. We're talking about Comstock, who, by one of his voxophones, still believes in slavery. And they are a seceded state. He could technically reinstate slavery, yet he doesn't. In 1912, the year that Bioshock Infinite takes place, 61 black men were lynched. In-game, 0. How is it that a city with institutionalized racism has no lynchings shown in-game, yet the country that has laws protecting black people has 61 of them? I mean, hell, you can turn on the news and, if you look hard enough, find stories of black people still being lynched in 2013. Why pick a subject matter so violent, so dark, so controversial, and so integral to our country's history, and then water it down so much? Black history and the black struggle is not a history founded on shitty jobs and shitty living conditions. It's a history founded on struggle, sacrifice, and lots of bloodshed. And to not show that in a game that uses the black struggle as its primary theme is irresponsible and negligent at best. Speaking of being irresponsible and negligent, Does anybody else see anything wrong with this clip? Or this one? Or this one? Or this one? Why is the Vox Populi a rebellion led by a black woman for equality, comprised of mostly Irishmen? Does that make sense to anybody else? I mean, black, Irish, whatever. I have a hard time believing that any man in this time period would be willing to follow a woman in a revolution. Yet, gender issues are never brought up in game. They were a very contentious issue at this time as well. But to imply that Daisy built her army with almost exclusively Irishmen is just silly. The game continues to undermine the black struggle by at almost every instance pairing the black struggle with the Irish struggle. Nowhere in history will you find a bathroom sign that says colored and Irish only. Those don't exist, yet the game puts it in there to cover its own ass by saying, hey look, yeah, we're gonna pick on black people, but it's not just them. We're gonna pick on the Irish too, and occasionally the Chinese sometimes. So you can't get mad at us, black people, right? No, wrong. In the few hours of research I did for this video, I found a couple sources which showed that things between the blacks and the Irish weren't all hunky-dory like the game makes it out to be. Yes, they were often paired together and lived in the same communities, but fighting for jobs created a lot of animosity between blacks and the Irish, and by the 1900s, the Irish had gained a lot more equality than black people had. A lot of Irish identified as anti-abolitionists, and once they gained traction in the job market, they actively tried to keep black people out of the job market. But where is that contention in game? Nowhere to be found. Instead, we're led to believe that blacks and Irish were the best of buds in 1912, and that's just not true. The biggest disservice that Bioshock Infinite does towards the theme of racism is completely drop it after the second half. When Daisy gets killed, there's no more mention of racial contention or racial struggle, just thrown to the wind, when in the first half of the game, you're practically beaten over the head with it. Infinite tries to flesh out its universe with a theme that's too heavy to be used as simply a backdrop. When you look at American history, when you actually look at it, you'll realize that the African American struggle has dominated American history. You'd be hard-pressed to talk about any period in American history and not somehow bring up slavery, civil rights, or any other portion of the black struggle. So for Bioshock Infinite to just completely drop it after the second half, it's a little irresponsible. But hey, that's just one man's opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Please be courteous to others. This can be a very hot topic and it can get out of hand pretty quickly. So be polite, be civil, and as always, I'll see you guys next time.